Welcome to the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, telling the unique stories that make up the diverse fabric of Pennsylvania.
Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Sydney Harris-White, and I am your host for today's episode. As we continue celebrating the stories, people, and institutions that shaped Pennsylvania's past and guide its future, today's episode brings us to a campus whose history is closely woven into the story of the Commonwealth itself. This year, as our nation approaches the 250th anniversary of its founding, Penn State Harrisburg marks a milestone of its own. The campus celebrates 60 years of teaching, research, and service to the region. Known as the Capital College, this institution plays a distinct role in preparing leaders for public service, supporting the work of state and local government, and strengthening the communities that surround Pennsylvania's capital city. Penn State Harrisburg was founded during a period of enormous national change in the early 1960s. It grew alongside the needs of modernizing Pennsylvania and has spent the last 6 decades shaping the Commonwealth's workforce, informing its public institutions, and empowering generations of graduates who continue to make a difference across the state. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Seth Wright, assistant teaching professor, whose work connects directly to the history of the campus and the region it serves. Together, we will explore the origins of Penn State Harrisburg, the meaning of its Capital College identity, the stories of alumni who have shaped Pennsylvania, and the vital role the campus plays in preparing the Commonwealth for its future. Seth, thank you so much for being here today.
I am so honored, so excited to join you, Sydney, on the podcast. It is amazing to think that we're so close to the semi-quincentennial of the United States of America.
Yeah, it is so amazing. It's really fast approaching. And to start us off with the episode, would you just be able to introduce yourself for our listeners and share your role at Penn State Harrisburg, along with how your work intersects with the history of the campus and the region?
By way of introduction, my name is Seth, possibly Wright, Seth P. Wright, and I'm an assistant teaching professor in the School of Public Affairs at the prestigious Penn State Harrisburg. I'm the chair of our undergraduate political science and public policy programs as well. I have a master's degree in public administration and a doctorate in political science. I moved to the U.S. in the early 2000s. I've lived nearly a third of my life abroad. Roughly half of that time was in Latin America and the other half in Western Europe. And I really appreciate this question, Sydney. I meet so many students. And in my view, each of our unique backgrounds help surface these truths about the world. So I'm just thrilled to be here, very excited for the invitation. My research interests lie in governmental transparency mechanisms, and I'm really interested in how public servants and the people that we serve experience transparency as a policy. And there are so many different applications of that. When I first arrived to the Penn State Harrisburg campus in late 2023, I remember I was standing in the Olmsted Building's atrium. It was early one morning. The building was almost empty. It was super quiet. It was that kind of quiet where you can hear your own footsteps and you wonder, who's coming. The whole place kind of gave me this feeling that it was way older than it looks. It's almost like a time machine, and it has this memory of central Pennsylvania, of everything around it, the factories, the river traffic, all of the Americans who built this region way before Penn State Harrisburg came to be. Okay, so I guess I'm being a little sentimental. This was a super simple moment, but it speaks to this question that you just asked, Sydney. It impressed upon me that Penn State Harrisburg is part of the pulse of central Pennsylvania.
And this year, we are celebrating a major moment in American history as the nation approaches its 250th. But at the same time, Penn State Harrisburg is celebrating its 60th year. How do you see these two milestones connecting or complementing one another?
I want to start out by pointing out that the preamble of the Constitution and Penn State's chant begin with the same word, we. We the people. We are. In this way, Penn State Harrisburg asks the same fundamental question that we are always asking as Americans. We're always asking, who are we? So that word keeps returning to me, especially in a year like this, that word, we. It's in the preamble. It opens the chant that echoes across Penn State Harrisburg. I remember our last commencement when we did the We Are call and response. I remember feeling that sound more than hearing it. Maybe you've had that experience. It was loud, sure. I mean, it was really loud, but it wasn't just the volume. It was more the split second between the we are and the answer Penn State, and how it just made everyone at commencement in the entire place, it just made us feel more aware of ourselves. And we all kind of leaned into that shared meaning. And more directly to your question, Sydney, that's the question that totally sits at the heart of these dual milestones, right? Both of these anniversaries that we're marking next year. The nation turns 250 years old, and Penn State Harrisburg turns 60. And these dual milestones kind of force a kind of self-inventory. The country has been asking itself the question of who are we since 1787. Penn State Harrisburg has been asking it since 1966 when it opened its doors to central Pennsylvania. And the question of who are we is answered differently by every generation. I'd wager everyone listening to this podcast has a different answer to that question as well.
For listeners who may not know the campus's story, so we're talking about 60 years of history here. Can you walk us through the origins of Penn State Harrisburg and what was happening in Pennsylvania and the country when it was founded in the early 1960s?
The first time I read that Penn State Harrisburg began on an Air Force base, it felt like a plot twist. You can kind of imagine students stepping into classrooms where officers maybe were planning flight routes. I don't know. That's an image that kind of stays with you because it captures Penn State Harrisburg and its uniqueness. The campus rose during a decade when the country was totally shaking at its foundations, right? Civil rights marches filled the streets. The Vietnam War escalated. There was this generation of Americans locating its political voice through the liberties that we treasure, free association and free speech, these super key and critical liberties. And in the middle of all that, the Pentagon announced that Olmsted Air Force Base would close. At that time, our Governor Scranton, understood that closing Olmsted Air Force Base was a blow. It would deliver a blow to Middletown, to the surrounding region. Thousands of families depended on that base in a variety of ways. And if we were going to lose it, it might hollow out some of the towns around here that had already weathered enough change. So Governor Scranton reached out to Penn State's then president, Eric Walker, and asked, can the university imagine something new for that site? And Governor Walker didn't need a really long runway. It just took a couple months, and he proposed with his team this campus here that would be very unique. It would blend academic work with a lot of practical field experience. So by the time October 1966 rolled around, the first students walked through the doors of, the old military base, and they started this new venture in a place that didn't look like a typical college, but at the same time, it wasn't meant to look like a typical college. And I think that opening move shapes the campus's character. Penn State is growing, and Penn State Harrisburg grows by adapting, and it built different programs. While the region was rebuilding itself too, right? There were all kinds of crises that we confronted together. There was Hurricane Agnes, 3 Mile Island, And we just kept going forward with this kind of, I don't know, determination that was required. And so reinvention just becomes a common theme. So the TLDR is that Penn State Harrisburg emerged from the community. It's a manifestation of the community that was in search of a new direction.
And of course, because really of its strategic location, but maybe for other reasons as well, Penn State Harrisburg carries the name Capital College. What does that designation mean, and how does it shape the mission, identity, and scope of the campus today?
Penn State Harrisburg, the Capital College. Sydney, when you said that, I could totally feel the weight of it. It's this weight that once you realize how rare it is for a university campus like ours to be so closely linked to the work of a state capital. First, the name Capital College reflects this decision that was made decades ago to take education and place it right within reach of all these institutions that govern the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And you can see that reflected in Penn State Harrisburg's vision and mission statement too. We emphasize things like responsiveness, interdisciplinary study. We have a big focus on applied problem solving. And that's pretty much the blueprint for Penn State Harrisburg, this college that grew up over the last almost 60 years right next to the people who keep a state running. But that also means some things for our students that are here as well. Being the Capital College means we're going to educate students in a place where legislation, public service, regulation, all these things happen within a really short drive. So students carry internships, they attend hearings, and they see to agency work, and they're very involved in their communities as well. And those experiences that they have at Penn State Harrisburg really sharpen the questions that they ask.
And I'd love to talk a little bit about some of those legendary people who have walked the halls of Penn State Harrisburg. The university has produced graduates who have shaped the Commonwealth specifically in meaningful ways. Can you tell us a little bit more about notable alumni or alumni stories that stand out to you as examples of the campus's impact?
My favorite alumni are my students. I love my students. They're absolutely the best. I am so impressed by them, and I learn from them every single day. I know that sounds super cliche. I often say we're the prestigious Penn State Harrisburg. And the reason why we're the prestigious Penn State Harrisburg is because of our students. They're the ones who bring the prestige to the university. There are lots of alumni, though, and the alumni stories that stay with me are the ones that begin with someone stepping onto the campus in a moment of their life that could have gone so many different directions. One example is Ronald Vaughn, who came to Penn State Harrisburg after serving in the Army. And he had once said in an interview that the campus helped him blossom. And as I learned more about him, I realized why he chose that word. His education at Penn State Harrisburg opened these opportunities that at the time he maybe couldn't have imagined. And now, years later, he has taken this incredible step and made this incredible gesture to future students by pledging millions of dollars to future business students so that they can have the same kind of chance that he was given. So with Ronald Vaughn, you see this whole arc of transformation, right, in his story. Education at Penn State Harrisburg, opening a door, gratitude, shaping this legacy, and this one single graduate, changing what's possible for students that he'll never meet. Another example comes from public service. Jennifer Homendi, she earned her degree here in the 1990s. a great decade, by the way, the 1990s, and went on to become the chair of the National Transportation Safety Board. How cool is that? It's one thing to teach students about all the machinery of government. It's totally a different thing to learn about a graduate who steps into this federal leadership role where all these decisions are being made that touch the daily lives of so many millions of people. And she has this career that says, look, she got an education rooted in the capital region at the prestigious Penn State Harrisburg, and that can send someone into national service with this super steady hand and this great sense of responsibility.
When we look at the economic role of the campus, both in the Harrisburg region and across Pennsylvania, what are some of the most significant ways that Penn State Harrisburg contributes to the state's growth and workforce?
When I think about the economic role of Penn State Harrisburg, I have to start with people, with families, small businesses, public servants, job seekers. These are the folks whose lives are shaped by the presence of Penn State Harrisburg in central Pennsylvania. And all of those lives then add up to dollars, to jobs, to innovation, to long-term growth for the region and for the state writ large. So one of the most concrete measures, though, there was a recent study estimating that in the fiscal year of 2017, Penn State Harrisburg contributed roughly $198 million to Pennsylvania's economy and supported over 2,400 jobs directly and indirectly. That's unbelievable. That level or that degree of impact shows something. It shows that the faculty, the staff of Penn State Harrisburg are incredible staff, are incredible students. All the work that they're doing has an impact to sustain livelihoods way far beyond the campus gates. The broader institution of Pennsylvania State University, including all of our campuses, injects over $15.8 billion annually into the state economy, billion with the B. That is the kind of scale that transforms how we can think about education, right? It's not a cost center. Education can be thought of as this foundational economic infrastructure. And because Penn State Harrisburg is one of the largest and most comprehensive of the Commonwealth campuses, it totally carries a significant share of that statewide impact. But if I go beyond just economic stimulus, the campus plays a pretty important role just in shaping the workforce and shaping the talent pipeline for the region and the state. Here's a concrete example of that. In 2025, Penn State Harrisburg announced this new initiative where we're going to offer a 15% tuition discount on graduate programs to all Commonwealth employees and their eligible dependents. That's a big deal. And the goal here is to make advanced education more affordable for folks already working in public service. And it's an important initiative, and it matters because our state needs this capacity, right, to retain and develop a very skilled public sector workforce, people who might otherwise face some financial barriers or time barriers if they wish to further their education while they're working full time. But moreover, because Penn State Harrisburg offers this super wide array of undergraduate programs, graduate programs, certificate programs, we have continuing education programs across public affairs, business, science, engineering, humanities, education. Penn State Harrisburg makes this connection, Sydney. It's connecting education directly to labor market needs. So Penn State Harrisburg is like this point of alignment. You've got employers and public agencies, nonprofits. You've got the things that communities need and what students need, whether they're new students, whether they're non-traditional returning students or mid-career students. They can come to Penn State Harrisburg, acquire those skills that they need, and then they can take them to work.
So kind of going off of the importance of Penn State Harrisburg to the local community, Pennsylvania's story itself is one of interconnected communities, families, and of course, institutions. In your view, how does Penn State Harrisburg fit into the broader story of Pennsylvania with these themes over the past 6 decades?
It's important to note that 6 decades ago, no one involved in this podcast was around. But that being said, I sometimes think about Penn State Harrisburg, I don't know, the way you think about a town built along a river. You totally see the flow before you can understand or comprehend the source. Penn State Harrisburg grew up during this really wild period where Pennsylvania was trying to rebuild its identity. There was this decline of manufacturing, the expansion of the Commonwealth workforce. Cities were reshaping themselves like Harrisburg and Philadelphia. And all of this combined and created this need for people who understood public institutions and could study those places where those institutions had faltered. So Penn State Harrisburg provided an answer. It offered programs connecting academic study, sure, but with practical skills, giving students somewhere they could go, where they could grow into roles that the Commonwealth relies on. The evolution of Penn State Harrisburg was part of this statewide network of communities that had some really specific needs: teachers, engineers, scientists, public administrators, business leaders. You can see all of that in the students who return from Penn State Harrisburg to their hometowns with degrees that then allow them to step into local government work, school districts, nonprofits, all of these different emerging industries. You can see it in graduates who move into the Commonwealth workforce and carry those lessons they learned there into agencies that serve millions and millions of people. The function that Penn State Harrisburg has served, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the function that Penn State Harrisburg has served is to provide that steady pipeline of people who are prepared. They're prepared for both opportunity and responsibility because they were just educated in a place where you can read the state's economic and social transitions in the lives of their peers. You know, everyone who comes to Penn State Harrisburg, our incredible student body, they have ambitions, they have anxieties, but they also have hopes for where they might be able to contribute. So sure, Penn State Harrisburg is totally a thread in the fabric of the Commonwealth's story. It's not the whole fabric, but it's a really strong thread. And it provides this reinforcement of what you said, Sydney. You know, we're reinforcing the state through education. We're supporting families who are building their futures here in the region. We're strengthening the institutions that are going to keep the Commonwealth moving. Penn State Harrisburg, I submit, is participating in this experiment of shaping whatever Pennsylvania becomes next.
Of course, I have to ask, as we look forward to America's 250th celebration coming this summer, what role do you think institutions like Penn State Harrisburg play in shaping civic engagement, public service, and the future of the Commonwealth?
Oh, that's such a good question. Sydney, every semester I stand in front of my classes and I introduce Penn State Harrisburg the way that I just described to you as the prestigious Penn State Harrisburg. Students, they kind of laugh the first time they hear it. It's not that they disagree, but because they sense that I'm trying to tell them something larger. You know, the prestige doesn't come from the buildings. The prestige doesn't come from the degree name. It's coming from them. They're going to supply the curiosity, the lived experience, the ambition that's going to give Penn State Harrisburg its standing. And whenever I have the opportunity to watch the room shift when they realize that is one of the moments that they're in, that really stays with me. And that awareness shapes how I think about Penn State Harrisburg and our role as the nation approaches its 250th year. We're in this incredible moment where civic engagement can rise or it can fall just on whether people believe that their participation matters. In my classes, I see students wrestling with this kind of question in real time. This question isn't an abstract. Does my vote count? It's not an abstract question. It's a part of our present and also a part of all of our futures. So the willingness of students to show up, to ask hard questions, to think creatively and innovatively, to read the Constitution, to actually read the Constitution. We often hear talking heads and pundits say that we're in this moment of constitutional crisis. The crisis is that we're not reading the Constitution, and reading the Constitution helps us to imagine better outcomes. And that's what tells me that Penn State Harrisburg is doing something really important. It's anchoring civic life. We're preparing students to go out and to work in state agencies, local governments, in classrooms. I love teaching. I hope many of my students become teachers. There's no greater call than being a teacher, but they're going to go out into these agencies that really depend on a functioning democracy. And that's where Penn State Harrisburg, with its proximity to the Capitol, students can encounter the machinery of public decision-making up close. Hopefully. I have students interning right now in the Capitol for some of our local representatives. I have a student who has interned with the Senate Sergeant at Arms in Washington, D.C. I have a student right now who is interning for Senator Fetterman. I have students who volunteer with advocacy groups. I have students who are writing public policy memos and learning to read policy as something that shapes our lives. Two of my students recently wrote policy briefs on skill games in Pennsylvania and also Pennsylvania funding of cyber charter schools. So you can see what's happening here. We're not just talking about theory on campus, and specifically in my work with students at the School of Public Affairs. Sure, there are theories. Artie Lang once wrote that what good is theory without experience? Our students are also looking for experience. So the broader implication here, to more directly address your question, is that our contribution to the Commonwealth's future, and I have a positive conviction that that future is bright, but our contribution to the Commonwealth's future is going to rest in the people we send out into it. If our students carry forward a commitment to public service, if they strengthen the places where they work, if they decide to help rebuild the trust in the institutions that are holding our Commonwealth together, then guess what? The prestige of Penn State Harrisburg becomes something way more deeper. It becomes this legacy that's being handed from one generation of students to the next. And that could be our reminder, like a living reminder that the story of America's democracy, well, we're still writing it. And our students, our alumni from Penn State Harrisburg, they're the ones who are holding the pen.
We've been talking a lot about the past of Penn State Harrisburg and, of course, the present. But with 60 years behind it, let's kind of look towards the future here. What excites you most about the future of Penn State Harrisburg? Where do you see the campus growing or evolving in the next decade?
I'm often reminded how relevant Penn State Harrisburg remains when I observe students encounter something that shifts or moves their sense of possibility. Not long ago, one of my colleagues, Dr. Shanti James, led her students, this group of criminal justice majors, into this virtual reality exercise. And it was designed to simulate the aftermath of a crisis. And this was an incredible thing to observe because not just because it looked futuristic. The students were wearing these VR goggles, and of course, we all look super cool when we have those on. It was impressive because it just felt really close to the scenarios they might one day face as they go out into the the job market. And I think that captures what we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring learning forward until it meets the world that our students are preparing to enter. At the same time, we see a similar instinct for a different demographic. So we have programs that widen the meaning of who counts as a learner. Counting is always a political act. That's what Deborah Stone says. But it makes sense here. Penn State Harrisburg has something new. It's called the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, or OLLI, OLLI. And here's what it does. It gives adults over 50 this place where they can keep studying, keep learning, keep connecting. Retiree taking a course on world religions, maybe seated next to someone still working full-time and is just curious about state politics. So OLLI has this range of life experiences in its classrooms that reminds us that, our desire to learn doesn't just go away as we get a little older, it gets deeper. One other initiative that really stands out is something else that's new at Penn State Harrisburg. We recently launched the Pennsylvania Center for Latino Research. Right now, we have a statewide survey going out asking Latino communities across the Commonwealth just to name the issues that matter most to them. And what I really appreciate about this approach as a social scientist is just the starting point. Right? It's beginning with listening, not with any kind of assumptions. We're all political analysts. The worst kind of political opinion begins with stereotype or this pernicious belief that the past always predicts the future. So their survey begins with asking questions, with listening. And that's might seem like a really small thing, but it's really, really important. And I would be super remiss if I didn't mention something. We have these programs, Sydney, called integrated undergraduate graduate programs, wherein a student can apply and earn their undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in 5 years. The criminal justice BS and master's degree is a really strong example. So a student can apply to this IUG program, and they'll move directly from advanced undergraduate study into graduate level work. And they've got this continuity that accelerates their preparation for the profession. Sometimes graduating is viewed as, the end goal, but it's not. The end goal is moving into the workforce. And our IUG program, this 5-year undergraduate and graduate degree program, shows that we're taking this super seriously. We've got to adapt to the needs of our students. We have traditional students, we have adult learners, we have folks who are public servants right now. We have lots of community partners, and we want to meet them where they're at. And that means that we have to change and adapt as time goes on.
I do just want to acknowledge what you said about, encouraging learning. Even, learning doesn't stop at graduation of an undergrad, but it continues. And I love that program you mentioned about people over 50 being able to come and learn and continue their learning, because no matter what age you are, really, learning is for a lifetime. So that was really, really great to hear. And finally, I would just like to close this out here because we're running a little bit out of time. If you had to describe how Penn State Harrisburg has shaped the lives of Pennsylvanians, what would you say? You mentioned that it's such an important thread in the fabric of Pennsylvania. Why is it so?
If I had to describe Penn State Harrisburg's place in the lives of Pennsylvanians, I would say it's been a place where people come to imagine what might be possible. The campus has shaped the region through educating students, but it also gives them this room, this location, this space where they can think about the Commonwealth's hardest questions. And they can do that with creativity and seriousness. I mean, think about all these academy-wide concepts like justice, legitimacy, power, identity, survival. This is a place where they can come and think critically about them and experience the wonderful diversity of thought that exists on our campus. We've got 6 decades that we're coming up on right now. And over those 6 decades, The campus has become this incredible setting where we've got students from different backgrounds. They come and they test ideas that matter. These ideas matter to the communities that they're going to serve one day. There are lots of theories out there. Theories are meant to be tested. Whenever a theory is presented as a dichotomy, as either this or that, that's exactly the moment when we have to start asking the most dangerous question that you can ask in a post-truth era, which is, how do you know? A post-truth era was defined by this incredible scholar, Rose McDermott, where she said, a post-truth era is one wherein we have to diligently resist believing lies. In asking the question, how do you know, really cuts through the partisan morass. Penn State Harrisburg is part of the Commonwealth's civic life. Why? It prepares people who have this willingness to engage in its challenge instead of just totally sidestepping them. And the campus gives students a place to come and practice those really great habits. And the function of that work continues long after students graduate. Every year, I hear from students looking for interns or partners or new voices willing to contribute to public service. If anyone listening would like to mentor a student or offer an internship or collaborate with one of our programs, I welcome that conversation. I'll provide my email address, spw5754@psu.edu. That's Seth, possibly Wright, 5754. One of those numbers might be my age. Neither of those numbers are my age. And I also want to mention one other thing. We have this form that we've sent out inviting people who have met their significant other on campus at Penn State Harrisburg so that they can tell their story. Sydney, when you talk about being a thread, in the fabric of the Commonwealth, I think that this survey that we have to link up with those people who didn't just find their education, but found true love at Penn State Harrisburg can also share their stories.
I love that, especially, I don't know if you know this, but I met my husband at Penn State University Park. So that's really fun and really cool.
Oh my gosh. You see, those are the kind of intangible benefits that a Penn State education provides.
Absolutely. Well, Seth, that is all I have for you today. I'd love to thank you so much for joining us and, of course, for helping us explore the story of the prestigious Penn State Harrisburg.
Thank you so much.
From its beginnings in the early 1960s to its role today as the Capital College, this campus has spent 60 years shaping the Commonwealth through education, public service, and community partnership. Its influence can be felt in our workforce, our government, and in many graduates who continue to strengthen Pennsylvania in meaningful ways. As our nation prepares to mark its 250th anniversary, it is institutions like Penn State Harrisburg that demonstrate how progress is built. They show us how generations of students, educators, and leaders contribute to the ongoing story of Pennsylvania, each adding to a legacy that stretches far beyond the classroom. Penn State Harrisburg's past is rich, its present is purposeful, and its future is full of possibility. As we look ahead, it is clear that the campus will continue to play a vital role in preparing Pennsylvanians to serve, to innovate, and to build a stronger Commonwealth for the next 60 years. To Seth, thank you again for your time and insight. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay PA proud.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassandra Coleman, Executive Director of America 250 PA. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. We encourage you to learn more about America 250 PA and send us your podcast ideas at america250pa.org.
This has been the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, produced by Commonwealth Media Services. Stay tuned for more epic Pennsylvania stories at america250pa.org.